Hello. Excuse me. Hello. Hello, hello, hello. If you can hear me and see me, give me a thumbs up, give me a like, give me a hello. We are a little bit early by my watch, but I think we are good. Who have we got here today? We got Heather, we got David. Oh, Heather can't make it, but David's here. Um, Iqbal is here. Scott is here with his 2020 vision. Dopey art design, Maxim, Eric, Much by Pal, B&A, Stan. Hello to you all. Vivian's here. Rick, Kathleen. Excuse me. JT is here. All right. I think that means we're good. We got Mieke, Grey Elephant Club. Pierre, Nicholas, and Gary is joining us. Okay. So, looks like we are good to go. Today's session is live streaming t-shirt design layouts. So, I'm going to be talking about layout, composition, all those kind of things. Stuff that we've touched on before, especially in design reviews, but I kind of go a bit deeper into this in today's session. So, first up, let's get started. If you can like and subscribe to the video, that would be much appreciated. Always helps to feed the algorithm. You can sign up at michaelessick.com/live, and you will be able to get a download of the slides that I'm using today, including all the links and useful stuff like that. As usual, ask questions live, and I will try and answer them throughout the stream. You can ask me about anything. But I am going to be talking specifically about composition and design layout and stuff like that. And if you stay to the end, there's a chance you could win a book. I'll tell you how at the end of the session. Last week's winner was Ubo Inu. So, Ubo Inu, if you can email me, that would be great. And I will email out a copy of my book, which I don't have to hand, but we do have. Oh, here's an old copy. So, well, in fact, yeah, this is an old copy, but you will get a nice, clean new one signed by me. And if you want to win one, you can hang around till the end to find out how. Okay, so without further ado, let's get into today's session. This is going to be about t-shirt layout tips. So this is what we're going to cover. We're going to look at some common mistakes to get started. We're going to cover composition. I'm going to give you some composition layouts and stuff. Then we're going to look at some shapes and things. We'll look at the interplay of elements. And I'll cover some tips to kind of sign off with and give you guys hopefully a good roundup of everything that we talk about today. Now, last week was a design review session. I got through about half of the reviews there. As part of this session, even though this is more of a teachy kind of tutorial session, I've included some of the designs that I didn't get to in last week's live stream. So if you sent a design in for last week that I didn't get to and I didn't review, then you may find it showing up here. Now, these are examples I'm using to show what not to do, so please don't be too offended. But I hope you'll take that in a good spirit, and I hope it will help you with your design as well to kind of see how you could have improved the composition and stuff like that. We have loads more people flying in here. We got I don't think I can get to you all, but we got Soul Visible, we got Shanda, we got Code Whisperer, DS Weesong, Nonna75, Accidental Fire, Andrea, The Happy, Healthy, and Wealthy Life is here. Janelle is here. Miguel and JL. Okay, great. So thank you all for joining me. It's lovely to have you here, wherever you're watching from. Janelle from Utah. I know we have people all around the world, which is lovely. I'm in Manchester in the UK. It is warm, balmy today, but not raining yet. And it's quite pleasant, actually. I think it's going to be hot towards the end of the week here. So kind of getting ready for that. Sarah is here and Marianne is here too. And Tara is here. Always nice to see familiar faces. And Ron, A2Z Man, is here too. All right, let's get into it. What am I starting with? I prepared these slides like an hour ago, so I can't remember anything about them. Okay, yeah, t-shirt layout. So a quick introduction to a couple of things. Number one, layout. What I mean by layout is how things fit together on the t-shirt and what they look like. And I think it's important to point out at the start that that is secondary to concept. So first you have an idea, then your composition comes after that. In fact, I kind of have a little illustration I put together here. Let me share my iPad. I will switch this up. So make this a bit bigger. So right here, you can see this is kind of the just a little illustration to hopefully help illustrate that idea. So first you have an idea, and then you're gonna, from that idea, you probably either as you have the idea or shortly thereafter, you come up with a rough concept. That's why this shape is kind of wibbly wobbly and nebulous around the edges, because it's rough. It's not clear in your head exactly how you're gonna realize that idea. And in that concept, you're going to have some elements. You're going to have things like text and graphics. And composition is really the act of putting those together, putting those elements together in a way that looks hopefully nice, visually appealing, and communicates the idea well. So a composition, you got maybe a text here and maybe a design, illustration in the middle or something. And that's kind of the process we're going to walk through. So as an example, a few months ago, I think now, we did the Nobel Prize winner example, which I kind of designed live, and it was a bit scrappy, but that was the idea. So it started with an idea, which was really a silly pun, and then you kind of, I include this link to the video, but you can find it on my YouTube channel. And then in the live, I just kind of walked through quite with some difficulty the idea of taking that from a rough concept and then trying to decide, okay, what are the elements, what's the style of graphics we're going to use, what's the style of text, and then putting that together in a composition. And it took me quite a bit of back and forth to really finalize something, but that's kind of what we're talking about, that whole process. So today we're going to be talking about this side of stuff, which is the composition. How you've got your elements, how do you fit them together, how do we make them look nice? Okay, so I'm going to switch back to my slides here for a second. So yeah, layout secondary to concept. Your idea comes first, and then the composition follows from that. So the reason I point this out is that a great layout will not save a bad idea. It doesn't matter how good you are at composition, even how good you are at illustration or hand lettering or whatever your skills are. If you've got a bad idea behind that composition, then it's not going to communicate well to the audience. It's probably not going to make sales, and that's a problem. So really, this all follows on from you having a good idea in the first place. So that's what we want to do first of all, is make sure we do have a good idea up front. But we're not talking about ideas today. We are talking about composition. Whoops, hold on. So yeah, the layout should serve the idea. The composition needs to really lift the idea and explain the idea, and in many ways kind of get out of the way of the idea. So good layout communicates the idea clearly, and it doesn't confuse things. So if you can, a lot of times, as with a lot of art, the real skill is in actually knowing what to take out, not knowing what to put in. Less is more in a lot of cases, and especially true with t-shirt design. If you can communicate your idea clearly and succinctly, then that's the goal. And a lot of times people confuse things, they throw things in that make things complicated, and a good layout will not do that. A good layout will communicate clearly, and it will serve that idea above all. So with those kind of things in the back of our minds as we dive in, let's look at composition and go through a few basic things. So composition means how you arrange the various elements of your design. A couple of just kind of tips to start off with. Usually you want to have things centralized unless you have a good reason not to. So your illustration, usually you want to sit it in the center of the t-shirt, and your text usually wants to revolve around that. And I'll show you some examples here in a second. And another big tip, which we're going to look at shortly, is to use a shape, an overall shape, to tie everything together. And I'll show you some examples of that right here. So layout elements, of course, that will include things like text, if you're using text in your design. main illustration. So if you have a main graphic, for example, our Nobel Prize winner was a dog. That was our main illustration. And then you might have some background or something. So with the Nobel Prize winner graphic, we had like a starburst in the background. Or you might have some supportive graphic elements, like some little, I don't know, little shapes or little elements and fiddly bits around, just to kind of support the overall illustration. So composition shapes, these are some that I've put together, and these are just kind of some basic shapes, and I'll show you in a second how I would use these, but I'll just kind of talk through each one and give you a couple of pointers on these. So of course with any t-shirt design, we have a canvas, we have the ultimate space we can print on. So usually these are the kind of designs I'm creating. I'm not talking about all over prints where you do graphics that cover every inch of the t-shirt. I'm talking about printing on the chest, kind of here to here, and this kind of thing here. So that's kind of what we're working on. So a kind of rectangle shape would fill that whole canvas, something like this kind of shape here. But of course, we've got square shapes as well. Now with squares and circles and stuff, you usually want to keep those in the chest area of the shirt, and I'll go into that in a bit more detail in a second here. But some other shapes you can use, like a diamond shape, triangles or upside down triangles. This kind of badged approach where you kind of curve at the top and then you have a flat bottom, or the reverse of that. And I don't even know what that one's called. Is it like a parallelogram or something? Things like that. So those are some basic examples. And then in the next slide, I've kind of illustrated exactly how you might fit your various elements in. So the main thing to kind of grasp from here, and obviously this is not like exhaustive by any means, but wherever you have things like a curved shape, that would mean you want to curve the text around that. And these are obviously kind of a very basic example where you have a very basic illustration and then you have some text around it, nothing too complicated here. So whenever you have curved lines or something, your text would follow that path. It would curve with the path, and then your illustration would usually sit in the middle with these kind of shapes. So these are very basic examples, but hopefully that gives you something to kind of run off and use. And I would recommend, especially if you're not clear on your concept, you don't really have a clear idea, that you maybe look at something like this. And again, you can get these slides at michaelessick.com/live, so you can have this and use it. That you look at something like this, if you have a concept where you're not clear, and you ask yourself, okay, which one of these kind of overall shapes do I want my design to fit into? Now, of course, there's much more complicated shapes and compositions you can get into, and I'll share some examples later on. But these are some basic ones that will hopefully, and these are the kind of shapes that I use most often, especially things like ovals and circles, and badge ones like this. They make up the bulk of my designing, really. So it doesn't have to be overly complicated, and doing something like this and thinking about various shapes you could fit things into is, I think, really going to help you, as you, especially if you're a beginner and you're looking for how you can make your designs look more complete and professional as t-shirt designs. I think this is a good place to start. So yeah, there's some composition shapes. If I just quickly go over to my iPad and I'll show you what I was talking about in terms of like positioning of the artwork on the shirt. So if we go here, so here's a very rough example of how what a t-shirt area looks like for printing. So right here is obviously our canvas. This is what we can print on. Now, usually you don't want to fill every single pixel of this space unless you have a good reason to. So for example, there are good reasons to where you might want to fill everything in the space, but usually this is going to be, majority is going to be transparent PNG. There's going to be nothing on it apart from the shape of our artwork sitting on top. So that's our canvas, our kind of canvas space. So typical kind of approach, typical approach would be to have a t-shirt, sorry, a circle template or a circle layout kind of in the chest area up here. A rookie mistake is to have, your design kind of down the middle of the canvas like that. That's going to end up printing on the belly, unless you have a reason to do that. For example, you're doing a paternity design or a, mother's, baby's coming soon design or something like that. You don't really want to have your graphic all the way down here. You want to keep it in the chest area up here. Now, I typically find with a lot of POD sites like Merch by Amazon, if you were to fill the full width of the canvas like that, so you see there my layout is touching the side, so it's right at the edges, then that typically is a little bit wide for a lot of designs, for a lot of t-shirts. And what that's going to do is end up bringing the print right to the edge of the shirt here. See a bit of my sweat stains there. Right to the edge of the shirt. And I have seen, and I don't know how prevalent this is, maybe others can testify as well, some complaints from customers who say the design is great, but it's too big and it curves around the edges and it's not on the chest. It's kind of started to curve around my body, and I don't like that. So I like to bring in my designs just a little bit from the edges, so there's a little bit of padding on the canvas there. And the same applies from the top. If you do have your design touching the top of the canvas, that can often mean it's like right up here. It's a little too high. It's uncomfortably high. And so I just usually, obviously this is very rough, but I'm just trying to communicate a general idea. I usually like to have a bit of padding at the top as well. So typically a kind of circular design would fit something like that. And the same for square designs, they would be up there. Diamond shaped design would be somewhere up there too. Your kind of parallelogrammy slanted text or something. And then finally, the only kind of real anomaly from this is where you would have a design where you're really making use of the full space. So maybe it's a text-based design where you're just filling it all with text or something like that, and you really want to max it out, in which case you can fill that whole canvas pretty much. Again, I still usually like to bring it in, usually like to bring it in from the sides a little bit, so it's not quite touching the edges. But generally with big designs like that, it does make sense to try and maximize them on the space. So hopefully that makes sense. That's just kind of how I think about where design should be positioned on stuff. Those are rookie errors that you see people making. They have designs that sit all the way down, all the way down the shirt, or for some reason off center, which is really odd. Unless you have a really good reason to go off center like that, then you don't want to do it. The only other perhaps popular reason why you might want to position things differently is to have it, positioned over the pocket area, which is also sometimes makes sense to do in certain situations. So hopefully that makes sense. Is everyone kind of tracking with me there? I'll just have a little break and a little drink. But yeah, I think hopefully that should make sense. That was just kind of covering the bases on where you should position your artwork on the shirt. Okay, let's see if there's any questions I've missed. I don't think so. Teresa said hello. Sebastian said hi. Anna says hi. Leonardo says Brazil is watching me. I don't know who Brazil is, but okay. Mark is here. Brandy is here. And Thaddeus is here. Okay, wonderful. Okay, so here's a great example on the subject of composition. This was from Rush Order Tees, a blog post which I'll link in the slides here right at the end. So if you download these slides, which you can do so at michaelessick.com/live, you'll get a link to the blog post where this was covered in a bit more detail. But I thought this was a great example of the issue of composition and how on the right here we have an example where all the elements are there, but obviously we have something that's not very visually pleasing. And on the left, we have one where everything's tied up nicely and you can see how it looks like a t-shirt design. It works as a t-shirt design and it really makes sense. I think if we kind of analyze this and why this one works so much better than the other one, Of course, first off, we've got the issue of centralization. So here they've centralized the illustration in the middle of the canvas. Over here, it's to the left. It doesn't really work. But right here, we've got it in the middle. And then they've had the text. They've really positioned the illustration first and then worked the text around it. I think that's a great place to start. If you do have an illustration and you know that you want the illustration to be the main focus of the design, then it makes sense to put that slap in the canvas straight away, and then you can start thinking, okay, what's the best way to fit text around this? So that's obviously one important point, the centralization of the illustration there. Another thing that's going on here, of course, what you'll see on the right side is all this dead space that's created. Because elements aren't closely tied in, there's this massive dead space here, which looks visually unappealing and looks amateurish. And they've got, just kind of weird, like things are off center and just looks amateurish. And those are giveaways of amateur graphic design, really. Whereas on the left here, you can see what they've done is taken that text and decided to use the centralization and even a mirroring concept, so that if you put Apollo 11 on this side, then we put mission on this side. So they've taken some of the text and broken it up, 1969, and we've got equal and mirroring effect of what's going on. So yeah, two things there. Centralize is an important concept, and then fitting the text and the textual elements around it, including breaking text up, which is fine to do on t-shirt designs. You don't have to have your sentences all run on in one line. You can take text, place it at the top, place the following line at the bottom, and it will work. It will make sense. You don't need to worry about that. So yeah, good example here of composition and the different kind of approaches. And yeah, things to look out for. Avoid negative space, fill the space as much as possible, and centralize your design. Okay, a couple of comments coming here. Ron said, I realized how huge my design was when I bought one and saw it in person, not just the on-screen mock-up. Live and learn. Yeah, good point there, Ron. And good advice as well. If you are slightly wary of the positioning and whether it looks nice and stuff, you can, of course, order a sample and see and hold it up and look at it and really and wear it and ask yourself, is this too big, too small, or whatever? So yeah, very good comment there, Ron. B&A loves the tips. Total sense, says Scott. Manash says hi. Sue says awesome. Sebastian says, obviously the left looks much better. Yes, it does indeed. Oh, Ubo Inu is here. Thank you, Ubo Inu, who won the book. Lance says, can you really do pocket designs on merch by Amazon? The thumbnail is so small that no one is going to click on it. No. Well, Lance, not if someone is looking for a pocket design. And that could work in two ways. Some people might search for certain designs which are a pocket, for various reasons. Or people might be looking for a design, and the design they have in mind is a design with a pocket on it. So yes, you can do pocket designs. In fact, some of my best sellers have been pocket designs on merch by Amazon over the years. Sebastian says the curving of the text helps a lot. Cool. Kushbu says, hey there, Michael. Hello to you. David says, easiest way to curve text. So I have always used Photoshop, and with Photoshop, it's very easy. There's the path text tool. Basically, if you draw a shape like a circle in Photoshop, and then you select the text tool, if you hover over the edge and the line of that shape, you can click, and then your text will follow the path. You can find, obviously, plenty of YouTube videos that will walk you through that. But yeah, that's the easiest way I found to curve text. I think there's probably ways now in other software as well that you can curve text relatively easily. So yeah, whatever software you're using, if you did a search for like whatever it is, Affinity Designer curve text, you'll probably find some ways to do that. Okay, Lance says, good point, so put pocket in title. Yes, I would usually put pocket in the title if my design was exclusively appearing here in the pocket area. So yeah, something to bear in mind if you're doing such designs. Okay, Affinity does it the same way, says Andrea. So yeah, Okay, let's look at some common layout mistakes here. So I have picked some examples, which I'll give it in a second, but some of the real basic ones that I think people should be aware of. Um, a real giveaway of amateurs is filling the canvas. So kind of the example we gave previously of the, you think about the printable area on your shirt. If you fill that canvas, that usually means, as in you cover every single pixel with color or something, that usually means you've messed up somewhere, because you don't want to fill that whole canvas. Usually you want to have a graphic that sits somewhere on it, usually in the chest area, and everything else is transparent. Just because you have a canvas to fill doesn't mean you should fill it. It's not a target, it's not a goal. You should treat that as a positioning tool, and then your design should fit within it. Another beginner mistake is not emphasizing the important points of your design. So I'll show this in a second. But for example, in a text-based design, people often will make less important words bigger, and the most important words will be smaller, and that's kind of reverse. Similar with if you have an illustration, usually you want the illustration to be big and clear on the design. You don't want to have a nice illustration that you've spent time putting together and have it small and not as big as the text and stuff. So that's another important thing. So here's some examples of this. These are, unfortunately, they are bad examples. I'm sorry, I'm not sure who sent these ones in. The one on the left, a reason it's a bad example of composition is that, or maybe not. Well, yeah, this is a composition problem. You can see here the size of the text versus the size of the illustration is really out of whack. So we've got here an illustration of a sloth. I can't even read on my computer clearly. Now, this was taken from a thumbnail from Etsy, but still, this is a thumbnail from Etsy and the text is at least readable. So you would always want your text, usually, unless you have a good reason not to, that text should be readable even at thumbnail size. And this is really small. Not only is it small, but it's very small relative to the graphic. If this is the illustration you want, then your text should really be taking up a bit more space in order to communicate the message. Otherwise, you're relying very heavily on the illustration and you're not actually communicating the message very well. So that's an example of where, text is too small. There is no, clear connection between the text and the graphic. And here on this one is kind of what I was talking about with the thing of emphasizing the wrong word. So here we've got education is important, but skiing is importanter. The problem here is skiing. Okay, skiing does have this banner behind it, so it is emphasized, but the size of the text is obviously a lot smaller than the word but. The biggest word on this design is but, which is arguably the least important element of the joke and of the phrase. So in an example like this, what you'd want to do is really reduce those unimportant words, make the more important words, the emphasis, to be on the word that you really want people to be drawn to, which in this case would be skiing. So there's a bad example there. Let's look at more. This one here I've kind of highlighted because this is an example where the illustration and the text, again, this text is a bit too small, but really what I would do with something like this, we've got a very simple phrase, do it like a king. Again, I'm not critiquing the concept or the idea here. Really just exclusively talking about layout and composition. So do it like a king here, a short phrase could very easily have taken this text and broken it up. So had do it at the top and like a king at the bottom, it would have created a more coherent t-shirt looking design, a design that fits well on a t-shirt, and it wouldn't look so amateurish in that sense. And of course, then you could have done something like curved the do it text on a path at the top, and yeah, just made it look more like something that you've spent a bit of time thinking about the composition thereof. In this example, don't know how well you can see this, but it says book off, I am angry. Here we've got a problem with obviously the positioning. So the positioning of the artwork is not on the chest where it should be. It's too far down. It's not quite on the belly, but it's not far off. So this has clearly been positioned quite poorly. And in terms of layout, there isn't really a shape, again, that this is fitting within. If you think about our previous examples of the different shapes, there is no shape that this fits into. There's dead space kind of here on the left and the right of the illustration. There is no curvature of the text. The text is not fitting closely to the design or anything. And that's, again, just another amateur kind of giveaway that these designs are not, the designer has not thought about fitting it within a shape and having some composition that kind of ties everything together. So sorry if those are your designs. Hopefully that critique helps you a little bit. It's not my intention to offend you or anything like that. It's just I thought these were good examples of where the composition could use some help. Okay, let me take a couple of questions here. Iqbal says, for the spaceman design, would a rectangle composition work as well? So let's see here. Our spaceman design, there it is. Would a rectangle composition work as well? I mean, yeah, this design, obviously the layout and the composition here is almost a rectangle, but you'll see what they've done is they've simply curved the text at the top and the bottom. And so it is somewhere between a rectangle and an oval kind of composition. Yeah, I mean, if you hadn't have curved the text at the top and the bottom, would it still work? Yes, absolutely. Centralization does help a lot there. But typically, I think if you can curve your text, unless you have a strong reason not to, I think it's always a good idea to do so. It just kind of makes it look like a t-shirt design. It kind of, sets the bar and really, really tells the viewer that's what this is. Good morning, Phil from cloudy California. David says the education and skiing concept is a sound one. Yes, concept on that one is sound. All these other ones, concepts are a bit weak, really, unfortunately. Although the education and skiing concept may be sound, but it's been done a bazillion times already. Stacy, an inscription is very important. It should be of such size that a buyer can read the inscription. Yes, that's true, especially if you're selling on wherever it is, Amazon, Etsy, you have a thumbnail on there. It's not going to be a massive graphic, so you want to make sure that the design is communicated effectively within that thumbnail, and that usually means that you want your text to be nice and clear on that and quite sizable in most cases. Okay, a couple of other bad examples. With this one here, so composition wise, we could say this is kind of filling the rectangle almost. So that's okay, but maybe less about composition with this one, but more about issues with consistency, which is another tip I'll kind of get to at the end, which is you really want to keep things consistent, which means keeping limited use of fonts, keeping to a limited use of colors, not having various different styles of illustration within your graphic, but keeping it consistent. And this is a bad example of that. So we got 4 different fonts going on. We've got 3-4 different colors. We've got the fonts are all completely different styles that don't seem to complement one another or contrast in a meaningful way. So there is no consistent idea being presented here. And then there's some kind of weird line work behind here at the background, which I'm not really sure what that means or what it's for. So yeah, bad example when it comes to consistency here. This one, I feel a bit cruel saying this is a bad example, but in terms of composition, I don't think it's great, especially for a t-shirt. The artwork is obviously very nice. The watercolor illustration of the flamingo is very nice, but the text is not, not ideal. I think it kind of, if we were to try and find a shape for this, I guess you could perhaps say it's a very tall triangle kind of thing, but it's not quite, of course, because the flamingo pops out. Now, a flamingo is a difficult animal to illustrate around because it does leave a lot of dead space because of its long legs and stuff like that. But there's ways around that. Like if you want to do this, if this was a concept, if this was a joke you had in your mind, if you said, hey, I've got this idea to do a funny flamingo shirt, the text will be flamazing, and then there'll be an illustration of a flamingo. Well, instead of doing it like this, why not get rid of the legs? Why not just do the flamingo's head and a neck or something like that, so that you can put together a composition that looks more appealing? Alternatively, if you're dead set on showing the whole flamingo like this, then I would consider whether you could extend the phrase. So the problem, of course, here is we've got a very short phrase, be flamazing, and it's difficult to separate the two words there and have it look nice because it just looks a bit, you know, looks a bit weird. So one option is you could expand your phrase. So instead of just saying "be flamazing," you could find another way to work flamazing into some text. So I don't know, something like "I just want to be flamazing" or something like that, or "I'm this girl is just flamazing" or something like that. You just extend the phrase so that you have some more text options to play with, and then when you have some text at the top and you have some text at the bottom, it will just work together. And I think even just looking at this design, you know, there's curvature on the back of the flamingo. It kind of curves around in a circle. It would be nice to have the text above here on a path, just curving around here. And then, of course, to mirror it vertically, you could curve it around the bottom, and then you just have something that looks a lot nicer than this, which looks a little bit, I don't know, blocky and thrown together like that. So yeah, those are some other examples. Iqbal says, "Thanks. I will make sure to curve my text." Yeah, unless you have a reason not to. B&A says, "Oh boy, the font on Eat is terrible." Yeah, there is some multiple problems with that one. And yes, Kathleen and Curious spotting the same issues. Okay. I think, let me just check what I had on my iPad to make sure I'm not missing anything. Yeah, okay. So if we go here, another thing to point out here in my slides is the interplay between elements. Oh, hold on, a couple of questions just come in. Kushbu, could we use the negative space in the flamingo design using the legs of the flamingo to start with F? Let me go back to the flamingo design and see if I can understand what you mean. Using the, in fact, let me pull up my iPad here because we could have a look at how we might approach this. So if we say that our flamingo, this is our flamingo graphic, roughly speaking. So what I was talking about before is, just make this a bit bigger, was doing something like I don't know, let's say our text is "I feel so flamazing." Now, I think this is better, but we still do have dead space like here and here. It looks a little bit difficult. So what I would be tempted to do in that situation is, you know, cut out the legs and maybe we just focus on you know, doing the flamingo's head. Don't really know how to draw a flamingo, but let's say it's something like that. And, you know, if it's pink and stuff, I think it clearly says flamingo. So that was kind of what I had in mind before. Now, Kushby, you said, could we use the negative space in the flamingo design, for example, the legs, to start an F? Now, it sounds like you know what you mean. I'm not sure I know exactly what you mean. Do you mean something like flamazing? Something like that? Be flamazing? Again, I think that's an improvement. If that's what you meant or something like that, then yes, that would be an improvement on the previous example because we've dealt with a bit of a dead space. However, I don't know. Yeah, that could work. I hope that kind of makes sense. Soul Visible says, have a design that, in my opinion, is too wide across the chest, but it's a best seller. Too scared to replace it. Yeah, absolutely. Of course, you don't really want to replace a design as long as it's selling well and you're not getting hundreds of returns. So yeah, absolutely, keep that up. I wouldn't change it, unless, of course, you are getting lots of negative reviews on it and it could be hurting. But you could, of course, you can keep that one up and upload a second version where it's less wide across the chest, if you're worried about that. It doesn't have to be either or. Okay, Cushbu says it gives a picture of F. I think what I've done is kind of what you have in mind. So, okay, Cushbu says yup. Okay, cool. So that's kind of what you meant. Kathleen says, put the flamingo on a bicycle to use the negative space. Great idea. Bicycle would definitely fill that negative space in. So yeah, if that works. Yeah, legs forming an F. Yeah, I think we're on the same kind of path there. Curious, what about head from front wings behind close up? Yeah, exactly. You could do something like, kind of body and head like this. And then the text, text at the top. I feel so flamazing. And then if you do have a bit of negative space over here, I mean, you could have, some palm trees, something to just pad it out a little bit. That's kind of what I mean by supportive graphic elements. Anywhere where you do have some dead space, with a little bit of thought, you can probably fill it in with something, a little bit of sunset, I don't know, some birds in the background. It wouldn't be difficult to fill the dead space there. And the idea is, of course, even if you just minimize that dead space, so you only have a couple of little pockets of dead space to fill, that's solving the problem. So Cushbu said, yeah, legs forming an F rather than just overlaying text or whatever. I'm trying to figure out how you would get the legs to form an F, because we've got one leg that would have to form the first bit. Are you talking about using the whole flamingo body? Because then that one could come and be the middle bit of the F. Well, then you don't really have a top bit of the F. Does that make sense? I think that top bit of the F, you'd have to, I don't know. Anyway, I think we've labored long enough on the flamingo design. Hope that makes sense. Manash says that looks good. Juan says hi. F says looks better. Okay, cool. So yeah, let's move on and talk a little bit about this other element that I think we should all be aware of, which is the interplay of your text with your, whoops, I'm not even showing you the right slide, which is the interplay of text with your graphics. So there's a couple of examples. Nobel Prize Wiener, which is the kind of finalized version of the one we did live a few months ago, and Ho 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 Chi Minh. So with both of these, what I've done is used I guess you could call it a technique or whatever. But what you'll see is here, Wiener, the text for Wiener, is overlaying the illustration. So it's in front of the illustration and it's blocking out, parts of the illustration from behind it. Quite subtle as well, but if you look really closely right here at the dog's nose and his hair, you'll see he is slightly overlapping the text there as well. So prize, the R and the E are slightly being eaten into by his hair. So if you think about this in a 3D kind of way, you've got Nobel Prize is the back layer, then you've got the dog illustration as the second layer, and then you've got Wiener as the third layer. So they're stacked like that. And what that does is it allows you to bring all the elements quite close. So they're all close knit and they're brought closely together. So there's really no negative space here. But it also means that there's this nice interplay between the text and the graphics, which ties the whole piece together, which I think makes things look a lot more professional. Now, it's done to a lesser extent on this side here. Obviously you can see the illustration. The Santa hat slightly eats into the Ho Ho Ho, and also his collar eats over into Chi Minh. So if you look at, this is something you'll see with a lot of graphic design. When you look at magazine covers, this happens a lot. The photograph of the celebrity or whatever it is on the magazine cover will be in front of Vogue or whatever it is. It will be covering it up or eating into it. So any way you can, I would recommend doing this. The important thing to note here is in order to keep your illustration and your text distinct. For example, over here, our illustration is kind of white mainly. And if we didn't have this little stroke between them, it would be difficult perhaps to distinguish between the text and the graphic, or they would actually be, part of the same element on the illustration. So when you're doing this, what I like to do is always use a stroke, and that stroke is usually going to match the background color. And that way you can have your illustration or your text in front of the other. Like here, you can see the stroke very clearly on Wiener, this navy line that's around it. And that allows it to be distinct and stand out very clearly from the background illustration. So hopefully that makes sense. I think the Nobel Prize Wiener illustration as well is a good example where there would have been some dead space here, above his back and stuff, but we filled that with the starburst effect, and it all kinds of ties it together and makes it work nicely as a concept. So hopefully that makes sense. Andrea says the letters eating into the graphic to bring everything together is a great idea. I will have to learn that. Yeah, and it allows you to make everything nice and close. Usually, there isn't a nice way to fit text and graphic together, and so if you can do some overlapping, it just helps make everything work nicely like that. Chris says, is there a specific phrase I should be using when searching for tutorials on this technique? I always end up getting way too wordy with Google. That's a good question, Chris. I mean, I'll try and explain to you my technique very quickly, and it's simply to create this. So for example, all I've done here is, if you imagine the graphic has been created and the graphic is sitting there on the canvas, and then I've created the text Wiener, and then I've simply added a stroke to Wiener. So a stroke in Photoshop, a stroke is just a line that goes around the element, and that will be the same language stroke that you'll use whether in Photoshop or Illustrator or Affinity or whatever you're using. And then I've simply made sure that stroke is matching the background color of my design. Now, when I come to export this design, what I will do is make sure I have some method of capturing everything that's navy on the design. So you could either use your channels to do so, or you could flatten the design and select, just the navy parts of it and cut them out. That's usually what I do. But yeah, that's basically it. You simply have a stroke around certain elements, make sure that stroke matches the color of the background, and that will give you this distance between text and graphics and stuff. And you can also use this on text as well. If you're overlaying text on text, it can work there as well. It doesn't have to be graphics alone. Okay, B&A says the illustration looks too big to me, should be smaller in the middle of all that text. Not sure which one you're referring to. Probably Ho 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 Chi Minh. Yeah, it is a bit overkill here, and to be honest, the design hasn't been fleshed out. If I was doing this again, I would probably do what I've done over this side. So I'd keep the Santa hat over there. Instead of having the collar in front of the text, I'd make the text in front of the collar, and then I'd add some communist, I don't know, Vietnamese graphic elements behind, maybe a Vietnamese flag or something, I don't know, something like that, to make it, to fill the dead space or something. But yeah, with a portrait like this, it's hard to, get away with, because you do want your illustration to be big enough to make sense. If you made this really small so that it wasn't touching or overlapping the text, it would be really small. So that's a problem. So that's, when you have an illustration like this, wrestling with how to fit things together is a skill and something that you'll gather over time. But yeah, using different elements in the background and stuff like that can really help to fill out the dead space. Okay, let me go through some tips really fast, and then I'll answer any more questions we have, and that will bring us in for a landing. So let's recap. Centralize. You want to keep your main illustration in the center unless you have a good reason not to. So if you have got an illustration, if that's kind of the basis of the design, then make sure you have that in the center, and then everything else can kind of revolve around it. Overlap elements where possible, and make sure you can use the stroke technique to make them distinct. But yeah, any way you can overlap elements and bring them together will allow you to get rid of some dead space. Then do so. Remove unnecessary dead space. Fill it with graphic elements or a background, some kind of graphic or something where possible. Use an overall shape to tie it all together. So we gave you those examples of shapes. Look at those. You can get them from michaelessick.com/live. Look at that list of shapes or keep it in the back of your mind and simply ask, how can I, which one of these works best? If I've got lots of text, which is the best way to lay that out in one of these layouts? And finally, consistency. So you don't want to be using too many colors or fonts. Kind of touched on that before. You want to keep your fonts limited. You want to keep the illustration style consistent. So, for example, if you look back at some of my reviews of designs that people have sent in, excuse me, one of the problems that I often come across is people are using illustrations from different places. So maybe they've done an illustration, but they've whacked some clip art on top or something, and the illustration style is not consistent. So I would always want to illustrate something in one sitting. I want to make sure that the illustration is a unit, that I'm not taking different elements. I'm not grabbing clip art of a palm tree from here and then grabbing clip art of something from there. Instead, I'm going to sit down and draw physically a nice illustration where everything fits together, where the line width of stuff is nice and uniform, and where something is going to looks like it matches, looks like someone sat down and done it in one sitting, really. So yeah, hope that helps. Split text to work around your graphics. So if you do have phrases and stuff, then break them up. You can have text at the top and the bottom on a t-shirt design. It will still work and read and make sense. Or you can have text on the left and to the right, like with the spaceman example. But yeah, fit that text around your graphic rather than the other way around in most cases. And immerse yourself in some good design. I think one of the best tips, or one of the things that really helped me to really get a grip with t-shirt design, even not in a sense that I knew or could objectively tell you, but instead just kind of things you catch. Some things are taught, some things are caught, and I immerse myself in all the various t-shirt websites, T-Fury, all these different places. And a couple of good examples, Shirtoid and Day of the Shirt are two websites that update every day with the top t-shirt designs from a lot of the Shirt a Day sites. So a lot of the designs will be pop culture-y, they'll be usually infringing, but they're still great when it comes to composition because they're done by a lot of very talented, usually very talented, quite high-level illustrators who understand composition. So if you just check those daily and just have a look at designs, just let your eyes rest on them for a few minutes a day, then over time you'll probably start to get the feel for what a good composition is, and or even on the other side, you'll recognize a bad composition and you'll look at your designs and realize, no, this isn't really fitting together very well. I need to improve this. There must be a way to make this better. A good example for that is I heard that, I don't know if this is true or not, but if you are, I don't know whether it's the FBI or whatever, whoever looks into counterfeit money in the States or whatever, the way they train you to be an expert in counterfeit money or maybe in banks or something is not to give you lots of counterfeit notes and to get you to check them out and realize all the tricks that make them counterfeit. It's instead to have you just spend lots of your days counting legitimate banknotes. And if you've done that hundreds and hundreds of times over lots and lots of days, then when a counterfeit note appears, you instantly recognize it. You can feel it in the fabric of the banknote or something. And I think it's the same principle here. If you simply absorb lots and lots of good designs by looking at them daily, by simply looking at them and absorbing them, then you'll know when a design doesn't look right, and you'll simply be able to feel that, and you'll be able to nudge things to make them better. So yeah, there's some tips, and here are some links to some useful resources. So again, if you go to michaelessick.com/live, you can download this PDF of the slides from today, and there's some useful links here. So I've put links through to the 2 YouTube videos where I did kind of do some live designing and kind of wrestled live with layout and stuff like that. One of them is the Nobel Prize Wiener. The other one was me designing some concepts live. So they're both there. There's a link here to the Rush Order Tees blog post, which was a good primer on composition and stuff. So I've got a link to that. Brad Colbo has a course on t-shirt design where he covers a lot of the basics, even a bit more basic than I've done here today. He really goes into the basics of some graphic design. So if you are a complete beginner, you can find a link to that there as well. Links today of the shirt and Shirtoid. And then Stefan Kunz is a hand lettering artist, and he has some composition grids, mainly for hand letterers, but he also has, I think, one here. I guess for people who are doing more illustration, here it is. So he has a little bundle here, and this may be useful for you. I thought it was worth just pointing out to give you some inspiration. And, you know, it's just, I think, I don't know how many composition grids he has here. 25 unique grids. So I imagine there's stuff like this. So it's where there's some illustration in there, but he's shown you how he would lay out text around it and how, you know, just a few different ways of approaching it. So that could be useful for you as well. So again, that link is in there in the slides, which are up now. If you go to michaelessick.com/live, you put your email in, you'll immediately be taken to a list of links, which is all the previous live streams we've done, including any PDFs. And right at the bottom is today's replay and today's PDF slides, which you can download straight away. So you get all this, everything we covered today, all this stuff, the compositions and bits and bobs like that. So yeah, hope that helps you guys. Let me see what questions have come in the past few minutes. Jennifer says, "Hi, Michael. Did you draw the Ho Chi Minh image on the iPad?" Yes, I think I did. I think I did it in Procreate. I probably brought in a photo of Ho Chi Minh and just, you know, sketched it quite roughly, because it is a bit of a rough design, isn't it? There it is. It's a bit of a rough sketch. It was done as an example design. It's not a finished design that I really, you know, sell or anything like that. If it was, I would really tidy it up and do a better job of it. But yeah, I think I did that one on the iPad in Procreate and then brought it over to Photoshop. Accidental Fire says, when you flatten designs in Photoshop, do you keep a version with separate layers so you can go back and edit individually if needed? I've been burned by flattening before. Yes, I always do that. I always keep a editable version of all my artwork. I keep them in a separate folder from the final artwork. And those are all Photoshop files that I can go back and edit at any time. Naz says, layout tips for typography designers. Yeah, Naz, I'm not really a typography guy. I'm not a hand lettering guy myself. So I think if you are into hand lettering, you probably know people like Stefan Kunz and Ian Barnard as well is another good one. Lauren Hom. These are all people with lots of great resources for typography designs if you're doing that kind of thing, including stuff like letter and grid builder things that are available, which are helpful for, you know, laying out designs and stuff. So yeah, check out those guys. Again, link is in today's slides. Ev says, thanks. Soul says, yes, a good idea. I think I might. I've never had any returns or bad reviews. Okay, cool. Andrea says, I learned a lot from trying to use the same composition with a different text niche. Then you learn how the design was made. Yeah, exactly, Andrea. Thank you for that. And thank you for that. Glenda says, great layout tips. Thank you. Shanda says, thank you. No problem. Heather says, general question, unrelated. No problem. I'm on tier 10, still learning, no sales, and I signed up to Merchant Informer thinking it would help me to find a niche. What are your thoughts, please? My gut feeling is that I can find a niche without paying and using other stuff. I know you mentioned a few on your blog. I'm effectively making a loss before I've ever got into it properly. Yeah, I think, you know, my experience with selling t-shirt designs started with Redbubble before there was merch by Amazon, and I created 3, maybe 4 designs, and they were designs around a subject that I was relatively passionate about and knowledgeable about, and that I thought there might be other people who would like it too. Now, there were no such designs. There was no real established niche. It was simply an idea that I thought, oh, some other people might like this. I'm going to create a design and put it up. And they did sell, not straight away. It took a good 30 days or something before I first made a sale on Redbubble. But I really think that's the best way to go, is to look at what you know, what you understand, and and then pick something from that. And of course, there may be a variety of options there. You probably have multiple hobbies, multiple interests, multiple things you're interested in, even something that you're only recently interested in. Maybe you watched a documentary and something kind of piqued your interest. So I would always look at things like that. Start with something you have an interest in, because that's where you probably have insights that other people don't have. Any tool that shows you what is already selling on Amazon, and there are a lot of tools out there, not just of course for merch, but for selling any kind of product on Amazon. They can only tell you what's already selling. They can't tell you that what you create is going to sell or not. They can help you maybe indicate that there's demand for certain niches and stuff, but you can usually figure that out simply by searching on Amazon in the first place. So I would always recommend people start there. Start with something you know about, try some different things. But if you're being led by what's already selling on Amazon, then it leaves little room for you to innovate and create something that isn't already on the platform, because you're kind of being led by, hey, this is selling well, or maybe that's selling well, or whatever. So I would like to recommend, especially for beginners, they start in less competitive, very niche, super niche things, and kind of learn and try things out that way. And that's not to say that you're guaranteed to make sales that way, because we're not guaranteed to make sales anywhere. It's simply that I think that's the best way to start and to start exploring. Hope that makes sense. B&A Michael, would you consider doing a design tutorial like today's, but applicable to text-based only, no artwork designing? Yeah, I'll add it on my list. I'm not. I do very little text-only designs, to be honest. And I'm not sure they're the best way for people to go. I think hand lettering is maybe a better approach if you're doing text-based stuff, and I'm not really a hand letterer kind of guy. But yeah, I'll add it to my list. I do have a big long list of things. Marianne Gardner says, "Can I use Procreate if I have Android?" Good question. I'm not sure. I'd be surprised if they're not already working on Android, if they don't already have a version for it. But I use it on the iPad. Okay, Stan says, "Hi, Michael. Sidetrack a bit. Just wonder, what is your take on collage/photography type T-shirt design? Does it print good on a T-shirt? Dealing with the gradient use, halftone, etc." So, Stan, a few years ago, I would definitely say that direct-to-garment printers are not really at the stage where photography looks great. But direct-to-garment printing, which is what all the print-on-demand companies are using, is getting better all the time. It's actually, really improving fast. So yeah, there are examples where photography will work well. It's not my bag. It's not, I don't have any photography designs. It's not something I've ever done myself. I've always been on the illustration and the graphic side. But they do sell. Obviously, they do sell. There's a lot of photography designs on Redbubble, on Society6, and other such sites. So yeah, I think maybe one thing to bear in mind is that if the more detail there is on a shirt, the more things get complicated and don't print very well. So as long as you have a photograph or something that's very clear, it's high contrast, the colors are nice and bright and clear and stuff, then I think it can work, but it's not something I have much experience in. Okay, Andrea says, "I love how you keep pushing us towards drawing instead of using clip art that have been used 1,000 times." Yeah, I think that's one of my big things, Andrea, is there's a lot of places offering t-shirt designs now, ready to use t-shirt designs or ready to use t-shirt graphics, doing vector packs or whatever, whether they're free or stuff you can subscribe to and things like that. I feel it's just a really short-term way of approaching it, because there's one problem is the potential for copyright infringement, which is to say, I'm sure that the guys who are producing these vector packs, almost all of them, are doing so legitimately, but it only takes one designer to be ripped off. And or even, a lot of the times what you find is some people they're commissioning designers to create some designs, but those designers they commission are going to go out and pretty closely copy someone else's artwork. And it's very hard to really police that and really know if that is happening. And it only takes one designer to say, hey, that was my graphic. You've clearly infringed it. Okay, you've redrawn it, but it's still clearly my graphic. And they could have your work taken down anywhere across the internet. So that's one potential problem, which I'm not, I still think that's an issue that not many people think about. It's probably not a major issue, but it's something that would worry me. Another factor is that I license my designs offline as well as online. With online stuff, copyright is relatively straightforward. If you infringe or your design is close to infringing, it will be removed, and that's fine. Your design gets removed, you'll lose future sales, but you probably won't be in any legal hot water. Whereas I license designs to, whether it's Hot Topic or Spencer's or whoever, I have to sign off and say, this is my design. I will indemnify Hot Topic or Spencer's if they are sued. So if there's any legal action that arises based on that design, I'm going to be liable for it. I'm going to have to defend it. I'm going to have to basically repay Hot Topic or whatever if they get into legal hot water. So that's another reason why I don't, recommend that people ever do that kind of stuff, especially if they're trying to build a long-term business from their graphics and from their illustrations and their work. So yeah, those are the two main considerations really. Why I think people always should be creating their own stuff instead of using vectors that they find from somewhere else. I guess the only kind of caveat there is if you're using stuff that's really kind of secondary, so those secondary elements, background stuff, palm trees, sunsets, little squiggles and lines or whatever it is, if it's not the main illustration, then that's usually going to be okay. That's unlikely to ever result in any copyright issues. But with your main illustration, if it's going to be the principal graphic of your design, then I would always want to either draw that myself or have commissioned that myself, so I know where it's come from and I know it's not, infringing on anyone's designs or anything like that. The other thing is, now you got me on the topic. If you're using graphics that anyone else can use, then you don't have a unique portfolio because anyone can use those graphics. So what you might find is, you go and try and license stuff somewhere and they'll be like, oh, I saw that graphic over here. I thought that was yours. Is it not? Da, 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 da. And so that can be an issue. So yeah, using graphic packs and stuff, not fine, but can be a problem online, can definitely be a big problem if you ever want to go beyond online and really build your own brand or something. Okay, Noonan says thanks. BNA says thank you for today's tips. Thank you. Mieke says thank you, Michael. Grey Elephant says just want to say how happy I am with your book and poster. Great stuff. Thank you, Grey Elephant Club. I will use that as a opportunity to point you towards that. If you go to my website, go down to books in the footer and you click on this first one here, Little Book of T-shirt Ideas, is what I believe Grey Elephant Club is referring to. You can pick up a copy of my book. We are back in stock now, so we have plenty of stock. And you can get other stuff like a big poster too, which you can hang on your wall. So yeah, check that out if you're interested in having better T-shirt ideas. Kushbu says, thank you. Gary says, totally agree. Draw things you know about and are interested in. Absolutely. Heather says, brilliant. Thank you. No problem. Jim says, loads and loads of great stuff. Thank you. Nah says, thanks for this tip. Curious says, so if you have some solid designs around a subject, should you do Shopify to protect the design stealing or go for it on Amazon or Etsy or both? I would always recommend if you're a beginner to start with the organic channels. So that would be Merch by Amazon. Etsy is an organic traffic channel, although it's harder to set up. Redbubble, TeePublic, sites like that. But yeah, and then you can graduate to Shopify. The thing with Shopify, of course, is that you will have to drive traffic. So if you're a beginner and you're not familiar with driving traffic through paid advertising and stuff like that, then it's always better to start with the organic channels. Phil says, what is the address of your downloads? Phil, it's right here at the bottom of the screen, michaelessick.com/live. Put your email in there. It will take you through to where you can buy that stuff. Ron says, many POD gurus push, place it, and Canva, or hiring out the designs and just churning out huge volume. Yes, and it works for some people. I don't want to throw stones at anyone or anything. I use Placeit for their mock-ups, never for their designs, but for the mock-ups because it's useful to use some of their mock-ups for Etsy and things like that. Canva I don't use, but I know Canva are now in the business of doing pre-made designs and stuff. So yeah, I think you've heard my opinion on it. I think it's just relatively short term. It can be. I understand like Canva's free, so it can be helpful for people to familiarize themselves with the basics of design and stuff. But I think that the main thing is if you want to build a decent business from this, if you want regular income, if you want recurring income, and you want it to still be recurring in 2 year, 3 year, 4 year, 5 years time, then you have to ask yourself, what value are you bringing to the party? And if you are downloading a pre-made template, changing the text, whacking it on Amazon like hundreds of other people are doing, then you're not really bringing anything to the party. You're not bringing anything of value. And you have to ask yourself, why would that be in 2 years' time? Why would that still be bringing in any money? Why would that be of any value? What value is a design like that that I didn't create, that anyone else can use, that anyone else can put on their website? What value is that to me? 2 or 3 years down the line, the answer is not a lot, I think. Kathleen, thanks, Michael. Kathleen says Placeit and Canva can be great tools to learn how to place designs. Yep. And again, if you're looking for inspiration for like how to compose a design, you can look at Canva and Placeit as good places to look at. Okay, what is it about this design I like? The composition, the shape and stuff. It's simply the using it, to sell that could be a problem. Okay, Sue says, I usually use photo from Pixabay and then turn the photo into vector. What do you think of that? I think it's not a million miles away from what we've just been talking about, especially if you are using it and turning it into a vector. What that usually means, and I've seen people do this, where they just take a photo, they vectorize it in Illustrator or whatever, and then they whack it up. And again, you've not really added much value to the world. You're not created much more, and you have based it on someone else's photo. Now that photo may be copyright free, in which case you'll probably be fine. But there may be cases where, again, someone's nicked the photo from somewhere or whatever, and it could land you in hot water. So I would always recommend, where possible, just drawing from scratch. I mean, I don't mean to labor the point, but I am really mainly graphic and illustration based. That's the basis of most of my t-shirt designs. I would always recommend that, I think, because that's my leaning. If you can take a photo and make it work on a t-shirt, then fine. I would always one thing I do a lot of is using Google Images for reference images and then sketching something out. So using a photo and using it as a reference image and then drawing it yourself is relatively safe, as long as you're not like literally tracing it or whatever. Then that should be fine. Okay, Manash, is it safe to use tags of Donald Trump and Joe if we put an election-based design in POD platforms? Difficult question to answer, Manesh, because every POD platform is different. But what is usually the case is that politicians, especially those running for president, are fair game, and I haven't heard of that being an issue at the moment. People do have designs taken down if they use trademark terms like "Make America Great Again." That is trademarked. Excuse me, so that could be taken down. But yeah. Jennifer says, thanks for more goodies. No problem. Enna says, I'm really not into designing. It's one of my weaknesses, but really thank you for inspiring me and making believe I can do this. A little push from a great mentor can be a really big push. Thank you, Enna. I'm glad that it's helping and inspiring you. Kushbu says, do you have a Kindle version? I have a PDF version, not a Kindle version as yet, Kushbu, of any of my books. Jonathan says, thanks for the insights. Thank you, Micah. Kathleen says, I think answering the question about tags. JL says, time to like the video. Yes, if you haven't liked the video or subscribed, please do so. That would be wonderful as we round up here. Kushbu says she's in India. Ubo Inu says, thank you, Michael. No problem. Kathleen, again, talking about the tags. Curious says, thanks. what percentage of designs do you think should be selling? That's a really difficult question to answer, Skandar. So many variables there. It really depends on so many different things. But yeah, can't really give give an answer there. I would less think in terms of what percentage are selling, and I would more think in terms of, is what you're doing working? So if you're starting from complete scratch, create 10, 20, 30 designs, get them up, give it a month, 2 months, see what the results have been, see what the responses have been, and then you can start to review and you can say, okay, what was my goal? Am I reaching my goal? Am I not? What's working? What isn't? And think of things in that way. Because until you've got some data, then it's very difficult to really make sense of stuff like that. Okay, thank you, Ron. Thank you, Sue. Can't read that one, I'm afraid. Manash, no problem. Ban says, hi, everyone. Could I take a photo of a statue or the likes? You could certainly take a photo of it, especially if it's your photo. That should be safe. Not 100% sure on the copyright of statues and stuff like that. But in general, I think that would usually be safe if it's a statue in a public place. Eric says, helpful, thank you, no problem. Nuna says, thanks for supporting my point of view. I need to come up with something different to the market, not only take someone else's work. Absolutely, you do. Chrome says, thank you, so helpful, no problem. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Stan says, hi, Michael, how can we fully utilize Google Analytics? I think that will be a topic for another day, Stan, because we're going to have to wrap it up here today. Reza says, can we use social media to boost sales on Redbubble or TeePublic? Yes, you can. However, if you are successfully driving traffic from social media to your Redbubble or TeePublic, then you might want to consider by then, especially if you're doing it consistently, setting up a Shopify store or even an Etsy store would be a good halfway house, because then you are starting to build a brand and you can make more profit on Etsy and on Shopify than you can on Redbubble or TeePublic. Okay, I think we're going to wrap it up there, guys. We've gone over by about 20 minutes. But thank you for joining me. If you haven't already, then of course go over to michaelessick.com/live to get your goodies from today. You'll be able to download not just the slides from today, but slides from previous live streams and stuff. So do that. If you haven't, do like and subscribe. That would be great. And if you'd like to win a signed copy of the Little Book of T-shirt Ideas, this book has 14 different T-shirt templates and over 100 examples of different T-shirt ideas. Then, please, once this stream is finished on YouTube, go and give a comment. Tell me something that you got out of today's session, and I will pick a winner at random before next week's live, and they will get a copy of my book, signed copy, sent over to them. So if that's something you're interested in, go and do that as soon as we finish the live here now. Okay, thank you, guys. I will say goodbye for now. Thank you, Marion. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Stan. Thank you, Facebook user. Great to have you all joining me as well today. It was a great turnout today. I think we had 200 watching live at one point, which was great. I don't think we've ever quite hit that before, so that's cool. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll do the same thing or something different but similar next week on Thursday, same time. So until then, take it easy. Have a good rest of your day, good weekend, and I'll see you all next week. See you later, guys. Goodbye. Goodbye.